All right, welcome everybody. As I am getting prepared for the presentation this week, I wanted to break out this presentation into three groups. We're going to be going over our first build, which is in building out basic personalization in our use cases. This is all under the theme of the 5 next level Ampscript tips that we're going to be going on November 1st at Mardreamin. I'm wearing my Mardreamin t-shirt. So let's get started. We're going to skip through a couple of pages of this deck and go into the overview of the 5 next level tips, of which we're going to cover a couple during this build session. So a couple of these tips to keep an eye on, we'll be highlighting in our session are these 5. Number 1, focus on the basics. Build that strong foundation in Ampscript before you add on complexity. To utilize your data in Marketing Cloud is to use up the variety of different lookup functions in Ampscript. We'll be going through those in good detail. If then is your friend, we'll be using if then statements all throughout our examples today to show how you can use it from a very basic standpoint to a very complex standpoint. Like those loops, those for loops in the lookup rows can be quite complicated, but we're going to take a good dive into those today, so that we feel confident. That's going to be in our second session. And then our last session will be the open canvas to explore some fun areas within Marketing Cloud. All right, so let's talk about our first use case, which is, or really the use case for the presentation, is Northern Trailer Outfitters has recently launched a loyalty program, and they want to begin communicating with their new members, and they want to develop a personalized and engaging email stream with their members. So we're going to be breaking this use case down into 3 different builds. And the first build we're going to do today is the best practices for personalization. So what we're going to be doing in this, we've got a basic welcome email. We've got some personalization that we want to use here, which is the rendering a greeting variable. So we're going to take a look at personalization strings versus variables, setting up your best practice area within the email using code snippets, best practices on greeting personalization, going through that in detail, the basic lookup solve when your data is not fully aligned in your build, and then looking at some ways to format for consistency. Before we dive into the platform, these are the key functions we're going to be going over today: attribute value, V, and empty and not empty. Attribute value is a way that you want to just function is a way to output your variables so that they can output in the environment. It's very easy, and it's a great way. A best practice tip on that is to use this to output variables throughout your work, so that you can double check. And we'll be showing those today. And the last core variable is empty, where you can use the empty variable to check if a variable is present and use that in if statements. One more best practice tip I forgot to mention for the attribute value is that you can use that. It avoids errors in your code and avoids those being converted to empty, null, or blank values. So they all get converted to the same value. A couple of other functions we're going to be using in our build today. We're going to be using proper case to initial cap the variable. We're going to be using a substring and subtract to be able to pull out a single portion in a variable, like first name out of full name. And then last, we're going to be using index of in our if statements. Okay, so let's move out of this deck, and we're going to go into our Marketing Cloud platform and take a look at where we are here. So here's that basic email that we've got set up and that the loyalty program wants to launch. And it is a pretty decent email here, especially using these %% name variables in Ampscript. So how that works, first of all, let's find a date extension that we're going to use to send this email. So if we go into, we have another tab set up of all of our data extensions. And this is a data extension that is going to be used for the send of our email, sort of mimic that process. The email itself. You can see there's some little bit of data inconsistencies. We have, not only do we have records that don't have a name, but you can see that some of these records are either fully capped or lowercase. So there's inconsistency of the data, which we're going to solve today. So when we've got this set up, this %% function in Ampscript is going to be pulling in that variable once you select that data extension with this email. So to see how that would render, let's go into preview and test. We're going to select the data extension, that email send data extension in our folder. So we're going to go to this hands-on folder, and we're going to go into Mar Dreamin, and we're going to select this email send. Now let's select a record that has a name field. You can see that name field there. When you select it, that name field, that %% now gets populated with John. Is you surround them with a %% at the beginning and a %% at the end. And while we're on the topic of that %% syntax, I also want to bring up to the group this amazing treasure trove of data points that are available for you in Marketing Cloud that's called these personalization strings. So all these variables become available to you at time of personalization. So if you're looking for the job ID, which you can use to find in the back end, if you're looking for the email address, that variable's here. Here's a helpful variable, the subscriber key usually is the subscriber key for the email send. You can use that for a lookup. So definitely utilize those personalization strings. But let's talk about a way that how we can improve upon best practices for personalizing this greeting variable. Which this is, excuse me. So let's drag over a code snippet block. We're just going to drop it at the top of our email. Now to open up Ampscript in code snippet block, really any block, you're going to open up with %% bracket. And then we're going to close it with that bracket %%. Now what we want to do in Ampscript is we want to use this attribute value function that we talked about a little bit earlier to set our variable, our name data extension variable, to a variable that we can output. And that'll just provide a more consistent level for that variable. So to do that, first thing we want to do is we want to do a var statement so we can establish that variable. And let's call that variable name. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a set statement. We're going to set at name. And we're going to do equals attribute value. And then we're going to do an open paren, quotes, and then it's that name variable which comes from that data extension. Okay, so now with that set, we have a variable now which is at name. And then what we want to do to output that variable, we're going to use the v function to do that. So coming back into here, we're going to go into this block. We're going to go into the HTML editor, and here's where we're going to put in the syntax for v, which is %% equals the function v. We're going to do that, open paren. We're going to put in our variable name, and we're going to do equals %%. So that's how you can render a variable in your greeting. So let's just preview that and see if that works as the other %% had done. Yep, there it is, personalized. Okay, so that gets us to a attribute valued variable. We now have variable in there. So let's take a look at the issue with this data, in that some of these variables are not present for that name. So what do we do in that use case? So luckily what we've got also as a data extension is we've got this universal file that has an additional full name or name option that we can look up and attach to a subscriber. So in our email send data extension, for every single record, we have a subscriber key, and that's that unique ID for each subscriber. In our universal data extension, most companies will have something like this, which is basically sort of your database of record within Marketing Cloud. We'll have for each of these subscribers, the name variable, which we saw populated in that data extension. We also have this variable called full name, which is an extended, a bigger name. I've got first and last name here. So what we want to do is use Ampscript to say if this variable, this name variable, is not there, let's look up into this universal file data extension and pull in the full name. So to execute that, we've got a couple of things that we want to do. And the first thing that we want to do is do a lookup to this data extension to return this value. We want to return this full name value. So to do that, we're going to use a function which is our second best, advanced tips practice for this session, which is lookups, the variety of different ways that you can use lookups. So if we go into the Ampscript guide, let's search for lookup. They'll give you a good, Ampscript guide gives you a great breakdown of the functionality to do all different types of Ampscript functions. So lookup is a function that returns the value of a single column from a data extension, which is what we want to do. We want to return that full name, and it gives you an example of the function of what it's going to do. Now there's 4 values that we want to include with this lookup function. The first value is the name of the data extension you're doing the lookup. The second value is the name of the column that you want to return. So in our example, it's that full name. The third variable is the name of the column that identifies that row to retrieve. That's going to be that subscriber key, which is unique to both the send data extension and the universal file. And then the fourth variable is the value that you are identifying that specific row. So to utilize this, what we'll do is, what another great thing about Ampscript guide is to give you an example of some syntax. So we're just going to copy this example, and we're going to drop this into our Ampscript code snippet block up here. So let's drop that in right here. Now the first field that we want, so again, that's the first thing we want to do is first of all, let's correct this variable so it looks right. The set function. Now we want to return, this is going to be, let's go to that data extension and see. So this is the full name variable. So let's just pull that in just so that we name that correctly. Right, so let's go into full name. And we're looking up, and the first field is the data extension itself. Let's go to the data extension name. And here we've got that universal file. Now the first thing that we want, what we want to output is we want to output this full name. So this is what we want to output for that variable. And then we need to determine in that data extension, what is the field that determines the value that we're looking up. So in this date extension, it is subscriber key is that value at the beginning of this date extension, which identifies each record, sort of that unique variable. So we're going to copy subscriber key. We're going to go back in here. We're going to put this in quotes. And then the last thing we need to do is that we need to identify the variable in the email send that corresponds with that subscriber key. So if we go to the email send itself, and this gets passed with every email send, we've also got subscriber key as well. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set this variable, set this value as a variable. So we're going to use attribute value for that. So let me just paste in this value for right now, subscriber key. And we're going to copy this attribute value syntax. Excuse me. Let's call this subscriber key. And then all we're going to do is we're going to set this to an attribute value of that subscriber key upon time of send. Okay. So now with all that set, we should be able to, sorry, let's just change this one thing. This subscriber key variable is now going to go in here in our lookup. That's what's going to terminate. Okay, so now we've got this full name as for every single subscriber as well, but we really only want to use it when that value, that name is empty or not present. So now we're going to do an if statement. This is the third tip in today's session is how to use those if-then statements. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an if, and then we're going to also use the function of empty. If empty, this @name variable, so if that name is not passed, then set, we'll do this as a new line. We're going to set the greeting. We're going to create a new variable for greeting equal to @fullname. And then we're going to do an else. And we're going to set @greeting equal to name. Now, just to clean up this code a little bit, let's put this subscriber key value up here in the var statement. Let's put full name up here as well. And let's put greeting, just so we have all these variables declared. Now, with greeting set, oops, one thing we forgot in an if statement is an end if. So there's three basic parts of any if statement. We've got the if itself, we've got the then, and then we've got the end if. Those are the three things you always need. Now we're using an else here because we want to have the alternate if that's not, but so you can use an else in there. And typically we like to nest the sets so you can tell, for that if statement. All right, with that said, let's go back into our email, and we're going to change this to greeting. And then let's preview this and see if that solved our problem with outputting those names. So again, here's that name value, and it's coming through as Patty Carlson, which looks like that full name that's provided. Here's an example where Kristen got rendered, so that's coming through that way. Here's an example where there is no name, and we see Chris Norrie. Okay. So there we go. Those three, three core functions. A is using that personalization, using those variables. Two, or B, using the lookups, the lookup function, which can be very handy. And number three is using those if-then statements to help create the variable, set it in different ways. Okay, so now we're getting better here. The one part that we're still not super excited about is two things really, is that we have full name for one variable, some variables, and we have first name for others. So we need to find a way to output the full name as just a first name. So let's go back into the Ampscript guide, and there's this great function called substring. So let's search for that, see what comes up for substring. Okay, so substring is returns a portion of a specified string, which is exactly what we're looking to do. We want to return first name and out of a full name. So the way this works is that you want to, there's three variables. First variable is the string, that's the full value that you're looking to extract the portion. And then it's just two things, the starting position of that substring, where it starts, and then the length of that substring of how much you want to output. So again, Ampscript guides got a really cool use case. So in this example, we've got full name of Kurt Harris, and what they want to output is just the first name of Kurt. So actually, this has got everything that we want in it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to copy this and output it, but we'll walk through what exactly this is doing. So you know what? We'll build this out without using that guide, just because I think it's going to be easier to sort of walk through how this would work. All right, so let's copy this syntax, and we're going to go into our header script, our Amp script that's got all the variables in here. And then what we're going to want to do is let's just put this in here for now under this code substring. In fact, you know what? Let's paste that up here. Okay. So substring, the first variable is full name. So we know that. That's the full value in our example. And then we know we want to start at 1. So we want to, it's because it is first name, we want to start at the first variable. And then we want that variable, so the last variable is the length of the name. So that's the one part that we don't know. You know, the name could be 5 letters, it could be 10 letters, it could be 3 letters. So to use that, and the next function we're going to want to use is that we can use to determine the value of that syntax. Let's go back into the Ampscript guide and sort of take a sneak peek of what they're doing. So what we're doing is we want to do a subtract of the index of this full name, which is going to return this value. So we're going to do some research on the index of function. What does the index of function do? So we'll look here in Ampscript. This returns the position of the first occurrence of the specified value in the string. So in this example, it's using that same value where it's returning a value of the where in this example, what they want to do is they want the index of in that full name, what position in that string is where that space is included. So so this would be like position 5 for Dale Cameron. And that's what we want to identify. So that would be the length that we want to know is how, Dale is going to be, 5 letters to hit that break. So let's go back into index of, and let's copy that syntax, and we can paste it into our code. So in index of, there's 2 values. One is the string to search, so that's going to be the variable that we're searching, and then what we're looking to find. So if we go back into our code, let's put this in. So this is all going to be in this third value. So we're going to do index of, and it's this full name. And that's going to be that full name variable. And then what we're looking for is where the single quote or the space occurs in that full name. And that will return the value, and that'll return the how long that first name should be. So let's just preview this right now so that we can see what just the index of function does. I don't think it's going to be perfect, but it should output the first name, and it might output an extra space as well. So let's preview this and take a look at what outputs. Yeah, so you can see Dear Chris, and there's a space. Again, this would only work for those variables that there is no name. Yeah, so there's that space. So as you saw in this code, the original code, they're using a function called subtract. So let's go back into our code to clean this up a little bit and make this work from a formatting standpoint. So go back into our code. And then, so what we want to do is we want to return the variable, the value of not where that space is. We want to return the value of the length one more space behind it. So we want to take that value of an example of the space 5, and we want to reduce it down to 4. So to do that, we can use another function called subtract. So let's just look up subtract real quick. And in this function, let's click into subtract. It is the number of of what you want to subtract it from, and then you want to how many values do you want to subtract it. So in this example, number 1 is 42.51, and we're minusing 5, and it returns to 37.51. So you can see num1 is the first variable, num2 is how much you want to subtract. So let's just copy this syntax. And we're gonna, you know what, I think I'm just gonna copy this syntax because I don't think we need all of that. Let's go back into our email, and we're gonna go into this index of, and before the index of, we're gonna do the subtract. And what we wanna do is subtract, which is this index of this whole variable is gonna be the first part of it, which is gonna be essentially, in that example, 5. And then we're going to just say we want to subtract the value of 1 to that, and that should reduce that space. So let's preview that and see what we get. I think we might have just forgotten one open paren. Let me go back into this. So we did a subtract, index of full name, comma, that closes that subtract, and then I think that closes all of that. So let's just preview this. Let's go back one more time. Let's just take a look at what we've got here. There's one extra paren I think we've got. Okay, so we've got a substring of that, and then we've got full name of 1, and then this subtract of index of, I think this works there, minus 1, and that's that subtract there. Let's try that and see if that worked. Okay, so there we go. We've got the, we've removed the space, and that's all looking good. That solves that first problem. And then the second thing we want to do is we're seeing with all the data, we're seeing a variety of different ways the data comes through. It's either all caps or initial cap. So let's go back in Ampscript, and there's a function called proper case. And this will give us an ability to format the data in, so originally, like in this example, Barb Brown should be initial case. So to do that, all we need to do is put a proper case around that entire variable, and we can do that in the output of the variable itself. So let's do this, and we can just do proper case, open paren, and that, let's just see how that works. We probably didn't use the syntax correctly on that, so let me just go back here and check this. Let's set this variable proper case before it actually comes into this block. So yeah, greeting. Let's try setting that in here. So we're going to set at greeting equal to proper case of greeting. And let's just check that syntax for proper case. Yeah. And then let's try that, see how that works. There we go. We've got initial caps. That is all looking really good, looking consistent with that data. Excellent. All right, one last thing I want to do on formatting is, you see all this Ampscript gets populated up here. Let's try to see if we can remove that. So to do that, you can just do a caret and then this, and that will remove that. Actually, if you do it outside of the Ampscript block, sorry, that will remove the Ampscript there, and then you can close it with that. So that way, when you're doing your email, it doesn't look with all that Ampscript block there. Okay, that wraps up the basic personalization part. The next session is going to be going over lookup rows and lookup ordered rows in more details. Thank you very much.